The city was alive that night, glowing with neon lights and endless movement. Cars rushed past each other, horns echoed in the air, and people walked quickly with destinations in their minds and comfort in their lives. Yet, beneath all that brightness, the city hid its darkest truths. One of those truths was Ariba. Ariba was a poor girl, invisible to most people. Her clothes were old and worn, her shoes barely holding together. Her face showed exhaustion, but her eyes still carried a quiet strength. She had no home, no family, and no place to belong. The road was her shelter, the sky was her roof. Every day she walked the streets begging, stretching out her hand with shame and hope mixed together. Some people dropped coins without looking, others ignored her completely. Many stared at her as if she didn't belong in their perfect world. But Ariba had learned long ago not to expect kindness. Her parents had died when she was young. Relatives turned their backs on her. Life pushed her onto the streets before she could even understand what life truly was. Since then, survival was her only goal. That night, light rain fell softly, turning the roads shiny and slippery. Ariba pulled her thin shawl closer around herself as she crossed the street. Her feet hurt, her stomach was empty, and her body begged for rest. She whispered to herself, "Just a little more. Maybe someone will help today." Suddenly, screech. The sharp sound of brakes cut through the air. A sleek black luxury car skidded to a stop just inches away from her. Shock froze her body. Her foot slipped on the wet road, and she stumbled forward, colliding with the car. For a moment, everything went silent. The car door opened quickly. "Can't you see where you're going?" The driver shouted angrily. But before the words could sink in, another voice stopped him. "Enough. I'll handle it." A young man stepped out of the car. He was tall, well-dressed, confident. Someone who clearly belonged to a world far away from Ariba's reality. His white shirt was perfectly pressed, his watch expensive, his presence powerful. His name was Zion. Zion was the son of one of the city's most successful businessmen. Money, luxury, and respect had always surrounded him. He had everything, except peace. As Zion looked at the girl standing in front of his car, something inside him stopped. His heart skipped a beat. His breath grew heavy. "No, this can't be real," he whispered. Ariba lowered her eyes immediately. Fear rushed through her veins. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to." Zion wasn't listening. He was staring at her face. Those eyes, that sadness, that quiet innocence. She was the same girl from his dreams. For months, Zion had been haunted by the same dream. Every night he saw a poor girl walking alone on dark roads. She never spoke, never smiled. She only looked at him with eyes full of pain. Every time he tried to reach her, the dream ended. And now, she was standing right in front of him. "Are you hurt?" Zion asked gently, his voice completely different from before. Ariba nodded slightly, trying to hide the pain in her leg. Zion noticed her trembling hands, the dirt on her clothes, the fear in her eyes. "Please sit in the car," he said. "I'll take you to a doctor." Ariba shook her head quickly. "No, I'm used to pain. I'll be fine." Those words struck Zion deeply. "Used to pain," he repeated quietly. Ariba didn't answer. For the first time in his life, Zion felt helpless. Not because he lacked money, but because he had no idea how someone so young could carry so much suffering. He opened the car door and said firmly, "Please, let me help you." After a long pause, Ariba finally agreed. At the clinic, the doctor treated her injured leg. Zion waited outside, restless. His mind was filled with questions. Who is she? Why does she live like this? Why does she appear in my dreams? Afterward, he bought her food, new clothes, and arranged a temporary place for her to stay. Ariba couldn't understand what was happening. No one had ever done this much for her before. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. Zion looked at her for a long moment and replied honestly, "Because I feel like I was meant to." That night, Zion couldn't sleep. and for the first time in years, Ariba slept without fear. Neither of them knew it yet, but this accident wasn't an accident. It was fate. Morning arrived quietly. For Ariba, waking up in a clean room felt unreal. Soft sunlight slipped through the window, touching her face gently, as if the world itself was trying to be kind to her for the first time. She sat up slowly, looking around. White walls, a small bed, a glass of water on the table. She touched the blanket with careful fingers. "This isn't a dream," she whispered. Her injured leg still ached, but it was wrapped properly now. Someone had cared enough to make sure she was safe. Zion. The thought of him made her heart feel heavy and warm at the same time. She didn't understand why a man like him would help someone like her. People like Zion lived in tall buildings and expensive cars. People like her lived on roads and under broken streetlights. Later that day, there was a knock at the door. Ariba froze. "Come in," she said softly. The door opened, and Zion stepped inside. He was dressed simply today. No sharp suit, no polished confidence, just a calm expression and honest eyes. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "I'm okay," Ariba replied, lowering her gaze. "Thank you for everything." Zion smiled gently. "You don't need to thank me. I just wanted to check on you." There was an awkward silence. Ariba finally asked, "Why did you help me?" Zion leaned against the wall, thinking carefully. "Because when I saw you, it felt familiar, like I already knew you." Ariba looked up, confused. "I know it sounds strange," he continued, "but I've seen you before. In my dreams." Her eyes widened. "Your dreams?" "Yes," he said honestly. "For months." Ariba didn't know what to say. She had spent years believing no one noticed her existence. Yet here was a man saying she lived in his dreams. That afternoon, Zion arranged for Ariba to stay in a small women's shelter nearby. It wasn't luxury, but it was warm, safe, and dignified. Before leaving, he said, "I'll come back." She nodded, unsure if she should believe him, but he did come back. The next day, and the day after that, sometimes he brought food, sometimes books, sometimes he just sat and talked. Slowly, Ariba began to open up. She told him about her parents, the illness, the debts, the night she was left alone with nothing but fear. She told him how relatives refused to take her in, how the streets taught her to survive without hope. "I never wanted this life," she said quietly one evening. "But I didn't have a choice." Zion listened without interrupting. Every word she spoke carved something deep into his heart. Then, one day, he finally spoke about himself. "I grew up surrounded by everything," he said. "Money, servants, education, respect. But I was always alone." Ariba looked at him, surprised. "My parents cared more about success than people," Zion continued. "They wanted me to become powerful, not happy. I was taught how to win, but never how to feel." He paused. "That's when the dream started. You would appear walking alone, silent. I didn't know who you were, but I knew you mattered." Ariba's throat tightened. Maybe, you were meant to help me." Zion smiled softly. "Or maybe you were meant to remind me what life really is." Days turned into weeks. Ariba slowly healed, not just physically but emotionally. With Zion's help, she learned basic skills. She began volunteering at the shelter, helping other girls who came from broken pasts. For the first time, she felt useful, respected. One evening, while walking together in a quiet park, Zion stopped. "Ariba," he said. She turned to him. "I don't want to just help you survive," he said. "I want to help you live." Her heart raced. "What do you mean?" "I want you to study," he said, "to build a future. And I want to stay in your life. If you'll let me." Ariba felt overwhelmed. "Zion, our worlds are different. People like you don't belong with people like me." Zion shook his head. "That's not true. Worlds don't matter. Hearts do." She looked away, tears forming. "I'm afraid." "So am I," he admitted. "But some fears are worth facing." They stood there in silence, the city lights glowing softly around them. For the first time in her life, Ariba felt something she had never dared to feel before. Hope. Time has a strange way of changing people. Not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, gently, like water shaping stone. Weeks passed. Ariba was no longer the same girl who had stood trembling in front of a black car on a rainy night. She still carried pain inside her, but now she also carried purpose. The shelter had become more than a place to sleep. It was a place where she felt human again. Every morning she helped clean rooms, served meals, and listened to stories of other girls who had suffered in silence just like her. In helping them, she began to heal herself. And Zion, he never disappeared. Sometimes he visited quietly, sometimes he brought books, sometimes notebooks, sometimes nothing but his presence. He never treated her like a charity case. He treated her like an equal, and that mattered more than anything else. One afternoon, after several weeks apart due to Zion's work travel, they met again at a small cafe near the shelter. It was simple, peaceful, and far away from Zion's luxurious world. Ariba arrived first, nervous. She adjusted her scarf and looked around. When Zion walked in, her heart skipped. "You look different," he said with a warm smile. "So do you," she replied softly. They sat across from each other. For a moment, neither spoke. "I miss talking to you," Zion said finally. Ariba smiled shyly. "Me too." After a pause, Zion took a deep breath. "There's something I want to tell you. About my life." Ariba nodded. "I'm listening." Zion leaned back slightly, his voice calm but heavy with emotion. "I was raised to believe emotions were weakness," he began. "My father built an empire from nothing. To him, feelings slowed you down. My mother lived in her own world of appearances. I grew up surrounded by people, but completely alone." Ariba watched him closely. "I studied abroad," he continued. "Best schools, best teachers. But every success felt empty. At night I'd return to my apartment and feel nothing." He looked down at his hands. "That's when the dreams started." He described them in detail. The lonely roads, the silent girl, the sadness that felt familiar yet unknown. "You never spoke in those dreams," he said, "but you looked at me like you were asking something. Like you needed to be seen." Ariba felt tears in her eyes. "Maybe I needed someone to notice me." Zion looked up. "And maybe I needed someone to remind me what matters." Silence settled between them. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was understanding. "I don't believe in coincidence anymore," Zion said quietly. "Meeting you changed me." Ariba hesitated. "Zion, people like you don't fall for girls like me." He shook his head gently. "You're wrong. People fall for souls, not status." Her voice trembled. "I have nothing to offer." Zion leaned forward. "You offer truth, strength, kindness. That's more than most people I know." That evening, as they walked outside, the air felt lighter. But not everyone was happy. When Zion's parents learned about Ariba, their reaction was cold. "A homeless girl?" His mother scoffed. "Are you serious?" His father's voice was firm. "This is a phase. End it." Zion stood his ground. "She's not a phase, she's a person." But pressure began to grow. Invitations stopped. Meetings turned tense. Zion was forced to choose between expectations and his heart. Meanwhile, Ariba felt the distance. One night she overheard women at the shelter whispering, "He's rich. She's nothing. This will never last." The words cut deep. When Zion came to see her the next day, Ariba made a decision. "This has to stop," she said quietly. Zion looked shocked. "What?" "I don't want to be the reason you lose your family," she said. "Or your respect." Zion stepped closer. "You're not a burden." "I've lived my whole life being one," she whispered. Tears fell, but this time she didn't hide them. Zion reached for her hand. "Let me choose." Ariba pulled away. "I need time." That night, they walked away from each other, both hurting, both loving, both afraid. But love, once awakened, doesn't disappear. It waits. Life did not stop after that night. But for both Ariba and Zayan, it felt like it had slowed down. Days passed, then weeks. Ariba threw herself into work at the shelter. She helped more, spoke less, and smiled only when necessary. At night, when the lights were off and the world was quiet, her thoughts returned to the same place. Zayan. She missed his calm voice, his patient listening. The way he looked at her, not with pity, but with respect. But she believed she had done the right thing. Some people are meant to meet, she told herself, not to stay. Meanwhile, Zayan's world felt unbearable without her. His life returned to meetings, formal dinners, and polished conversations, but everything felt empty. The laughter sounded fake, the success tasted hollow. At night the dreams returned, but this time the road was empty. No girl, no eyes, no silence, just darkness. Zayan woke up one night breathless, his heart racing. "I can't lose her," he whispered to himself. The next morning he confronted his parents. "I'm not asking for permission," he said calmly. "I'm telling you my decision." His mother stared at him. "You're throwing away your future." "No," Zayan replied. "I'm choosing it." His father's voice was sharp. "Love doesn't last, status does." Zayan met his gaze. "Then you've lived your whole life without love." The words hung heavy in the room. That day Zayan walked away from the comfort he had always known, not dramatically, not angrily, but with quiet determination. He searched for Ariba. When he finally found her at the shelter, she looked surprised and afraid. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I belong here," he replied. They sat in the courtyard under the fading sunlight. "I tried to live without you," Zayan said. "I failed." Ariba looked away. "You don't know what you're giving up." "I know exactly what I'm giving up," he said softly, "and I know what I'm choosing." He took a deep breath. "I don't see you as a poor girl. I see you as the woman who changed my life." Tears filled Ariba's eyes. "I'm scared." "So am I," he said. "But love isn't safe. It's brave." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring. Not extravagant, not flashy. "Ariba," he said, kneeling slowly, "will you marry me?" Time stopped. Her past flashed before her. Cold nights, empty hands, loneliness. Then her present, this moment, this choice. She whispered, "Yes." Zayan smiled, tears in his eyes. Their happiness was quiet, but real. The wedding was simple. No grand halls, no powerful guests. Just honesty. Ariba wore a modest dress. Zayan stood beside her with pride. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt chosen. Marriage did not change Ariba overnight, but it changed the way she looked at herself. The first morning after the wedding, she woke up quietly, unsure of where she was. The room was simple but warm. Sunlight filtered through the curtains. For a moment, fear returned, the old fear that everything good disappears. Then she heard a voice. "Good morning." Zayan stood at the doorway with 2 cups of tea in his hands. He smiled. Not the confident smile of a rich man, but the soft smile of a husband. "You're really here," Ariba whispered. Zayan walked closer. "And I'm not going anywhere." Their life together began slowly. They lived in a modest apartment, far from luxury, far from expectations. Zayan chose to start fresh, working independently, building something of his own without his father's shadow. Ariba struggled at first. She wasn't used to comfort. She apologized for everything. She hesitated before sitting on furniture, before speaking her mind. One night, Zayan gently took her hands. "You don't have to earn your place here," he said. "You already belong." Those words healed something deep inside her. With time, Ariba began studying again. Zayan encouraged her to follow her passion, helping people who had been forgotten, just like she once was. She started working with NGOs, then shelters, then schools. Her story became her strength. People listened, They saw a woman who had slept on roads, begged for food, and still chose kindness over bitterness. One day, Ariba stood on a stage, speaking to a room full of young girls. "I was invisible once," she said. "But invisibility does not mean worthlessness." Zion watched from the back, pride filling his heart. Years passed. Zion's parents eventually reached out, not with apologies, but with understanding. Time softened what pride once hardened. Ariba welcomed them with grace, not resentment, because she had learned something powerful. Forgiveness is not for others, it's for freedom. One evening, Ariba and Zion returned to the street where they had first met. Rain fell softly, cars passed by, life moved on. Ariba looked at the road and whispered, "I used to think this place was the end of me." Zion squeezed her hand. It was the beginning. They stood there in silence, two souls from different worlds, united by fate, choice, and courage. Ariba was no longer the girl who begged on the streets. She was a wife, a voice, a light, and Zion was no longer the man trapped by wealth. He was free. Together, they proved one simple truth. Love does not rescue you from life. It teaches you how to live it.